All right, 70s Richard here, hijacking the title pending movie podcast end of the summer wrap up because, unbelievable as it is, there hasn't been a post on the title pending for almost 2 months, and it's been almost 4 months since they did their summer movie draft 2016. I can't believe, given the results, that Fogues isn't crowing about the outcome and posting or insisting on a podcast being posted almost immediately, because he's got a lot to crow about. As it turns out, though, you guys don't seem to be interested in pursuing the podcast the way you once did. I know, work, other commitments, and you just can't be as funny as you once were once you reach a particular age. I understand that completely. As it turns out, Joe will not be repeating this year. In fact, I don't know exactly how you planned it and worked it out this way. Not only is he not repeating, he's in fourth place, and it wasn't even close. As a matter of fact, he had less than half the amount of money brought in by his films than Fogues had. So it's a pretty disappointing outcome from his point of view. We'll talk about some of the films that he picked in just a minute. Tank, of course, came in second. Congratulations, second place. Very honorable, although I'm sure that you would have appreciated doing better. The truth is, the only reason that you came in second place, Tank, is because you had Finding Dory on your list. All of your other films were very middling performers, but Finding Dory is the biggest film of the year with over $480 million, far ahead of Captain America, Civil War, surprisingly, almost $80 million ahead of Captain America, as a matter of fact. So, in essence, you lucked out because you got that particular item in your list. That's the thing that allowed you to finish in second place. So, good on you. It's always good to pick a Pixar film. It's a safe bet in that particular situation. Terrence, you ended up in third place. You probably know that. You guys probably keep track of all this stuff, but you're not sharing with your fans. All the people who are out here listening and waiting for you to crow or give excuses or, shamefully admit that you don't know what the hell you're talking about. Any of that could be true. But in this particular case, I think, Terrence, you had a good pick. You started off with that pick with Captain America, and that is the number 2 film of the year so far. It's certainly the number 2 film of the summer, at least. And with over $400 million, it's not a bad pick at all. But once again, your other films vastly underperformed. I think Bourne is probably the second movie that brought in the most money for you, and that's barely $156 million. So it doesn't look like your picks were all that great. The truth of the matter is, I think the summer sucked, and that explains a lot of why it is that you didn't get all the stuff that you might have wanted to do better on these particular things. Although I can't imagine why you picked Neighbors 2. That just seems like a terrible choice to me. All right, and then Joe, I think X-Men Apocalypse was your top choice. And talk about underperforming, that film also $155 million, so it's way down from what the franchise is used to performing. The reviews on it were terrible. I don't know, and to be honest with you, you guys talked about how bad the Ghostbusters trailer looked from your point of view. From my point of view, the X-Men Apocalypse trailer looked wretched, and so I'm not surprised at that particular outcome. Joe, unfortunately, you also had the worst movie of the summer, the one that people deserve to lose their jobs over. It was a wretched piece of business. Independence Day Resurgence is just awful. Awful, awful, awful. And it barely made $100 million, and I feel bad that I contributed anything to that, but I'm afraid I did. What a terrible film, and people should be ashamed of themselves for having made that film. On the other hand, I think that you were pretty clever in picking Angry Birds and Central Intelligence. Both of those probably performed about as you would expect in the slightly above $100 million range. Maybe Angry Birds could have done a little bit better, but I think they're pretty reasonable. But Now You See Me was just a disastrous choice for you as well. Well, let's take a look at Fogues' choices, because since he came in first place, he seemed to have been pretty lucky with a couple of picks. I don't think luck had much to do with it. Suicide Squad had a lot of talk behind it, a lot of anticipation. There was some criticism, but I think that was one that you could look forward and say the fan guys were going to go crazy for it. And even though it got a lot of bad comments and negative reviews, it still did business. And at that time of the year, it was the item for people to see. It was the #1 film for 3 weeks straight, and it's still doing business, so it's not like it was a bad choice. You seemed a little bit hesitant about The Secret Life of Pets. That was I think another obvious choice. That's a good one. There was a lot of anticipation for that. It comes from that studio that makes those horrible Minion films that you don't like, folks. So I understand why you might have been hesitant to pick it as a choice. But the truth of the matter is, children's animated film from a reliable source like that, that again seems like a good bet. Although a couple of years ago, I think How to Train Your Dragon 2 underperformed as well. But this one, that performed really well. And let's face it, for a year we'd seen pets doing weird things in those promos. Anybody who likes dogs is going to be watching that movie. And there are a lot of us out here who are big dog fans. So I think that turned out to be a good pick. Everybody was right about Ghostbusters. It was a bust. Not a good film. It did a little bit of business, but nothing close to what they needed to do to justify doing a sequel or reboot and keep the franchise going. A little bit. Conjuring 2, I think, is performed about what people expected. It's pretty much equivalent to what the first one did, maybe even a little bit better, so that's good. And then I think, folks, you were a little disappointed that you were picking Tarzan, but I think Tarzan performed pretty well considering that it didn't have the anticipation factor that a lot of other films had, and it doesn't really have big stars in it, or it didn't at the time. Maybe Margot Robbie is going to be a bigger star now that Suicide Squad has been such a hit. And Samuel Jackson, he's always good for an extra $10 million in some crappy film, but in this particular case I thought it was a pretty good film and a good pick overall. So Folks comes in with over $1 billion at the box office, actually $1,016,311,285. That's through the end of the Labor Day weekend. Tank comes in second place with $833 million, so not even close to the $1 billion mark. It's $833,042,553. Very respectable. Terrence, you ended up in third place by about, it looks like it's about $75 million under what Tank had, with $749,181,096. That $96, that's the thing that was going to make the difference, I'm sure, in your score. And then Joe, $558 million. So it's just over half of what the first place was. I just think you ran into bad luck this year. So you've been dethroned as champion, but we're going to be looking forward to hearing from you guys again, assuming you could ever bother to put your podcast back up, people. Come on, how hard is it for you to talk to each other for an hour and gloat over one? I bet you've been doing it online with one another and leaving the rest of us out of this. Shame on you, shame on you. All right. Now, personally, I thought there were a few films that we missed picking that did pretty well. I kind of thought Sausage Party would have done about what it did. It's almost $100 million. Nobody picked it. I think the Purge movies, which I have not seen any of and have no interest in seeing, but they seem to be performing pretty well. They certainly would have, I think, been a better pick than Now You See Me 2 or Neighbors 2. I think I'd have picked that one over that. Late in the summer, you had Lights Out and Pete's Dragon, which are still in theaters, still doing a little bit of business. They weren't significant. I don't think it would have made any difference if you'd picked any of those films. So there wasn't an obvious one that anybody missed. A lot of films underperformed, and some films performed so much better than you expected them that's the outcome. So congratulations, folks. Now quit patting yourself on the back and instead put your podcast back up so the rest of us can listen, okay? Thanks, guys. It was a fun summer. Hope to see you soon. This is 70s Richard out from the West Coast.